The Exodus is our national story, yet we're asked to make it particular, to make it real to each of us as individuals. In every generation, every person must regard himself or herself as if they personally came out of Egypt. So we're invited to, in fact, obligated to mine our own psychology, our own lived experience in order to inhabit the story. We must relive and remember the experience. This is regardless of our theology or what we believe. Rabbi Art Green said, "I'm not sure if it really happened, but I know that I was there." One of the primary ways that we enact the Exodus is through food. And I'm sure we all are feeling the effects of that this morning. But it's not just the act of eating that helps us enact the Exodus, it's the way we eat, the manner in which we eat. Una said yesterday when we were talking during the Devar Torah, when we were asking questions, the question she asked was, how would eating leisurely look today? Right? Because we're mimicking some sort of like Greco-Roman practice, right? But what it would look like today. So I thought, I'm not sure. I'm really intrigued by that question. But I know that our tradition teaches us that a sign of freedom is the capacity for gratitude. And that freedom and gratitude really go hand in hand. Only a free person can thank God with a full heart. Gratitude is expressed in Judaism through blessings over our food. And it's a central feature throughout Judaism, but it really gets highlighted in the Seder. Traditionally, Jews say 100 blessings a day. And it made me think about contemporary self-help teachers who suggested the practice of gratitude journals to help increase mindfulness and indeed happiness. And I think it's a terrific idea and a very useful one. But Jewish blessings are sort of like the OG, like the original gratitude journal, if you will. I want to invoke Rabbi Sager of blessed memory, who noted the shared root between the word for pool of water, brika, and blessing, bracha. This philological relationship highlights how blessings recognize God as a source or a wellspring that sometimes overflows. Judaism offers blessings for all different types of phenomena, large and small, from being able to use the bathroom to seeing a rainbow. But blessing our food provides us with a practice that is particularly useful for mindfulness, since we eat at least 3 times a day, so we have lots of opportunities to offer blessings. That's every day, but Pesach offers a kind of special lens for thinking about blessing and for thinking about gratitude. Most of us are fortunate not to know real hunger in a real sense. Although this is obviously a wonderful thing, the spiritual risk that accompanies this state of constantly being satisfied is that we might grow complacent. We might forget to be thankful for what we have and take it for granted. Or worse, we tend to attribute our own satiation to our successes and forget that it doesn't all come from us, right? That just because we went to the grocery store and bought all this food doesn't mean that we alone were able, even if we worked really hard to bring our Seder to fruition, there were so many other people and ultimately God behind our ability to sit down and have a friends and family. So I wanted to bring us briefly to one of the best examples of what I'll call gratitude liturgy, and it's found in our Seder. And of course, it's Dayenu, which we sang actually earlier this morning when we were addressing the first Sefer Torah. Dayenu, that would have been enough. It's actually a very, very old prayer. It dates back to the early medieval period, and it was found, in fact, in the oldest Siddur that we know, Seder Rav Amram. Thank you to our dear Professor Jeff Hoffman for teaching Molly and I this. Inside joke. From the 9th century Babylonia. There are 15 stanzas in Dayenu, and they echo the 15 steps that the ancients would take leading up to the temple. As they would ascend, they would recite the 15 psalms of Shir Hamalot, one for each step. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs of blessed memory notes that the word Dayenu, which of course means enough, echoes the phrase from Malachi that is recited as part of the Haftarah. We heard it last Shabbat, the Shabbat before Pesach. And the English translation is, I will pour you out a blessing of as ad lidai, which the sages of the Talmud translated as, until your lips are exhausted for saying enough. So this song, Dayenu, is a kind of a tikkun or a repair for the ingratitude that the Israelites showed when they were wandering in the desert. Remember how in every single stage they were complaining. So the idea is that where they complained, we will give thanks. One interpretation also of the structure of this poem is that when we reflect on a benefit that God, or actually by extension another person, has done for us, we shouldn't be general. In fact, we should break our gratitude up into multiple components and meditate on each element. Gratitude and blessings need to be specific. In fact, Erica Brown calls Dayenu a detailed thank you note to God, right? Which is when you think about how you might have taught your children how to write thank you notes, right? That you don't just say, thanks, Grandma, right? You say, thank you for the birthday money. I used it to buy. No. You'll tell me afterwards. So I want to, in closing, just suggest that perhaps that we might bring a Dayenu mindset into our post-Pesach lives. The Dayenu mindset is a challenge, though. It's a particular challenge. It's always a challenge, but I think it's a challenge even more now when we tend to look around and feel hopeless and feel depleted. And we ask ourselves, what if it's not enough? What if actually I'm not enough? What if I'm not doing enough to fight for justice, for peace? What if I'm not doing enough to help everyone who needs something right now? And also, what if I don't have enough for myself? What if I don't have enough for my family? These are real questions that we're facing, and sometimes they hit us squarely when we try to say Dayenu. So in closing, I want to suggest a dialectical approach that I learned from my teacher, Marcia Linehan, the amazing psychologist who developed dialectical behavior therapy. She taught that a dialectic happens when there are two things that seem mutually exclusive, and yet both can be true and must be true at the same time. And that sounds confusing, and it's best explained by an example. She would say, I'm doing the best that I can. That's true. And I need to do better. I need to do more. That is also true. And that is the dialectic that we contend with when we try to bring Dayenu into our everyday lives. It's enough. And also, it's not enough. we are enough, and also we need to do more. And with that, I want to close and say Chag Sameach,